Okay, so let me explain. So for question 2, all you're doing is creating tables, and for question B, all you're doing is filling the tables with data. I'm going to be using XAMPP to demonstrate the use of this SQL code. So let me just create a database and call it maybe BIP. And then I'm going to paste the code that I just sent. And then when I press go, it creates a table, it creates a database. So the new database I created has all these tables. So let's go and look at the SQL which I used. So we first created a table called electoral area. So electoral area has a column called electoral area ID, electoral area name, electoral area HQ. And if I look at the table, if I select the table electoral area, I'm going to see it has a column for this, this, and this. So wait, let me first show you all the other tables. The columns are created. So this is why we generate these SQL codes, to just create these tables easily in XAMPP. Actually, in XAMPP, you can create the tables manually, but then if you have the SQL code, you just paste it like I did, and you have this generated for you. So for the code part, the code looked something like this. This was the code. Let me explain everything that this code does. Ignore the, So firstly, we created a table called electoral area. Electoral area had a column called electoral ID, and it could only take 30 characters. This means that this column, so these letters can't exceed 30. And then it's a primary key, meaning if I select one row in that table, no other row looks like it. They can be different because the electoral area ID is different. Yeah, so they can't have the same electoral ID. And then we terminate it with a semicolon. Then we create another table called voter. Voter had a national ID column, and then I used big int, so this national ID can take big integers, and it's also the primary key in this table, meaning no other row can be similar to another one. Let me show you a good example of this. So from this table I've created, you can see these two people. These two people have the same national ID, the same name, the same they have the same name and the same national ID. The other things are different. So this means if I want to select someone with a national ID of 2, it'll bring a result that displays both of these people. So if I want to just have it like select a specific person, I'll set the ID to a primary key, meaning that it can uniquely identify each person in this table. And also, it's a good idea to have the ID set to auto incremental, because this means if I add another person If I create a table, the first person will be given an ID of 1. The second person will be automatically given an ID of 2. So that's the purpose of auto incrementing. So then we can use the ID as a primary key because each person has a different ID. Okay, so for the voter sex, we set it to enum. Enum means you have only specific data regarding to a certain column. So if the voter sex is set to an enum, this means it can either be F or M. Same case for like subscriptions, you can either be a gold, premium, or bronze subscriber. So those are enums: gold, premium, and bronze. Not null means you have to fill it in. A voter address, not more than 100 characters. So the address can be as long as you want, but the characters must not be more than 100, and then it's not null. Email, not null, and unique. So this means that two people can't have the same email. Two people also can't have the same number. Foreign key references electoral area ID. So this means that this column called electoral area ID, this column, electoral area ID, is actually gotten from this other table called candidates. So they're basically the same column, but this one had it originally. So now if it comes to this other table called voter table, it becomes a foreign key. But then they have the same thing. If I change a value of a foreign key, the electoral ID, let's say I change someone's ID in the other table, this other table will also have its ID changed. So it's just the same column in different tables. So the same column called electoral area ID is originally in the electoral area. Oh wait, yeah. They're just basically with foreign keys, all you have to know is that they're the same column. So if I change my value in this table, it will also change the other value. They're the same thing presented in different tables. Electoral position table, just create it, set it to a primary key. But then also I also have to mention that this national ID cannot be a primary key in this table, because if I select people with the national ID 2, it will give me 2 people with that same national ID. So I did mention we have to set this to auto increment. So with voters national ID in the SQL, after writing the name of the table, which is the name of the column, which is voters national ID, then I set it to primary. I also have to set it to auto increment because I want it to be unique. So the first person will have an ID of 1, then the second person, it will automatically increment to 2, then to 3, etc. So then it can be used as a primary key because it uniquely identifies each row. Then the candidate table, the type of data is big integers. Then it's a primary key in this table. So we create the table, the primary key, because this one will uniquely identify it. Varchar, character, this one. So the candidate date of birth is of type date, and it's not null, meaning you must always fill this. You can't skip it. The sex is an enum, so we only have 2. You can either be male or female. Not null. Vying, varchar. So the foreign key, same thing here. Foreign key, then the name of the column in this table references the name of the other table and the column, which is the same as this one. So position vying is the same as position ID. They are basically the same column but in different tables. So when you write foreign key, you first write the name of the column in the table you are in, which is candidate, and then the other table is called the electoral area, and then the ID, which is the column which is the same as sorry, this one is the same as this one. In the current table, the electoral area ID is the same as the electoral area ID in the electoral area table. Then creating the voting detail table. So this one is a bit different. Firstly, we create the column voting cycle, set it to only accept integers. This one doesn't have a limit of how many integers you can have. And then it must always be filled. Then the date must always be filled. Then the voter national ID is a big integer and it's not null. Position ID, so not null, and it's a character and it must only have 10 characters, meaning you can't have this. If you count these are more than 20 characters. So this one's 1G, these ones are how many? I don't know, but I roughly estimate them to be 10. And then the primary key. So here we have the primary key. You see, initially the primary key, like for example in this table, it was only the candidate national ID column which was used as the primary key. But then in this voting detail table, we have multiple columns as a primary key. All of these are primary keys for this table, meaning all this will be uniquely used to identify each row. Instead of just using one column, you have to check the ID, check the name, check the this, check the that. So all of that can be used to identify one row. So this one, since it's a primary key with many columns, it's called a composite key. Then the foreign key references. So the foreign key voter national ID references voter national ID. So in this table, it's called voter national ID. In the voting detail table, this column is called voter national ID. And where is it from? Which column is the same as this one in another table? It references voter national ID, which is in the voter table. So they're basically the same thing. If I change the ID of one person here, I'll also change it in the other table without actually having to change it. Just changes automatically since they're the same thing. Then the foreign key here, same thing, same thing, same thing.